Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener-supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, everybody. We forgot to talk about one thing, so we're putting this at the beginning. So if you're listening, you're hearing this, but I forgot to ask Kristen about the ghost stories that she is producing and collecting and telling as it relates to Parkville Nature Sanctuary. So give us a little plug for that, because that's happening this fall, 2022.
Yes.
And tell our audience about that.
So it'll be, for the first time, and I don't even know how long, it'll be free. Luckily, I got a lot of input from folks. So we use it as our fundraiser, a main fundraiser. So we were always charging admission for it. But I, being the person I am, don't like to make anything easy for myself, decided, you know what, let's start a fundraiser. Let's make this truly a community event. My goal was to make it free for people. All I had to do is raise $5,000. Because that's how much it costs to put it on. So met our fundraising goal just barely. And so Ghost Stories will be free for everyone this year. Hopefully we can do the same thing next year. If people feel like donating, they will be able to donate at Ghost Stories. Some context, Ghost Stories is a Halloween event, family friendly. It is this year on October 29th from 6 to 9 p.m. We will have a magician. We will have a band. We have people telling interactive stories up at the Girl Scout shelter. We have Bentley Guitar. They man I call it the s'mores pit, but really it's a fire pit. And some of the students, they're remarkable. They go out and they play music for people while you make your own s'mores as a family. This year we are bringing back food and the spooky trail. We didn't have that last year due to COVID. So it's really exciting. There will be hot dogs and veggie dogs and chips for food. The spooky trail, I have never done it before, so I'm really excited. I'm kind of having the volunteers who have always done it guide me on how to set it up. So that will be at the Nature Sanctuary, like I said, October 29th. If anybody is bored, on October 27th, we do what's called pumpkin carving. So the trails get decorated with jack-o'-lanterns. And this year we are going to be ambitious, and we are doing 300 pumpkins. Mr. Lanny Frakes, he is a farmer, and he's at the Parkville Farmers Market every Saturday, and he donates 100 pumpkins to us every year, which is huge. That's like $300 worth of pumpkins. So October 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the McKeon Stage in English Landing Park, we'll have live music, and we are going to be trying to carve all 300 pumpkins. It's family friendly. It's so cute. And then we decorate the trails with all the jack-o'-lanterns that we carve.
Wow.
And people can take home jack-o'-lanterns after Ghost Stories. So if you're there at 6 and you leave at 6:30, cool. Take your jack-o'-lantern home.
Do you have to sign up for this?
Nope. You just show up. We'll have food.
Where, do you show up? Where at? Right there at the parking area? Pumpkin carving will be at an English Landing Park. You just show up there, you park your car, walk over. And then Ghost Stories, we have our small parking lot. Luckily, the health department lets us use their parking every year, and Park University. So if you have to park over at Park University, there will be a little tiki torch path you can walk over. And since it'll be free this year, we'll have ambassadors of sorts. So they'll hand you your map. If you've got little kids who are like, I am not going on that spooky trail, then get to the Nature Sanctuary before 7:15, because that's when the spooky trail starts. You will be hearing chainsaws and screams, hopefully, if we can actually scare people. But I am so excited because this will be the first year we have a magician, and he's amazing. He's a good friend of mine's father. Okay.
Diggy the magician.
Okay.
Yeah. Or maybe he goes by David, but I call him Diggy.
All right. Sounds like a blast.
It will be.
That's what I would have called that as a kid. That's a blast.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Hopefully we'll see you on October 27th and 9th.
All right. We're gonna get to the rest of the interview now, so take care.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. We're so glad you're joining us. And we've got Kristen Bontrager with us today. And she is overseeing the Parkville Nature Sanctuary, which is one of my favorite places to go for hikes, meditation, nature, all kinds of stuff. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. I love it there as well. So anytime I meet someone who is obsessed with the sanctuary like I am, I have to get to know them better every single time. That's how I wrangle in half the people who volunteer with us.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So let's have you just share a little bit about your, like where you grew up, where you're born, where you grew up. Just give us a little background, and then we're going to jump into your love for nature, Parkville Nature Sanctuary, and those kind of things.
Magical. I can do that. A summary of my existence. So,
right.
Born in Florida, lived there until I was about first grade, so middle of first grade. Popped over to Kansas in February, so that was a shock for me. So grew up in Lenexa, graduated high school, Shawnee Mission Northwest, 2006, and went to college many years later in Topeka at Washburn University. But I lived in Lawrence, so I drove because I did not want to live in Topeka at the time. I loved Lawrence. And then after I graduated college in 2016, 10 years later after high school, I moved to Kansas City, and I've been here since. Well, I guess I moved to Kansas City, Kansas now, so I went from Missouri to Kansas. I love Kansas City, Kansas. I plan on being here as long as I can until I can't take the winters anymore, and then my heart's telling me I gotta go back to Florida. It's warm there. I don't like cold.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the winters at the Parkville Nature Sanctuary?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's so serene. I hate the cold, but you forget about it after a while because you are out there in the nature and the creeks are all still flowing, but instead of being, like 2 feet wide, they're covered with ice, and there's about 6 inches that you can see flowing. And just like that serenity, I forget about the cold. It just becomes cold at that point. It's not painful.
Yeah. I hike there at the winter and I love hiking in the winters.
There's no ticks, there's no poison ivy, trees don't fall as much, so it's less work for me.
Yeah. So what did you major in college?
I majored in botany. Well, I guess it was biology, and then a focus on botany with conservation. I like to say undertones because I did my undergrad research in conservation. So biologist and botanist here. I got a minor in chemistry. I don't use it ever, but I know a lot about chemistry.
And then did you do a master's degree?
I'm working on one right now, actually, in management. And so once I get through that, then I'm going to go back, and it contributes to my public administration. So I'll probably, because I really like where I'm at working in government. And I like knowing it's not it might be a control thing. I'm like, I like to be in charge of the budget and what goes on day-to-day activities. So I think public administration will be what I get my master's in. Yeah. Double master's, sort of, I guess.
Okay. Like, when did you first start having a love affair with nature?
Ooh, every day of my life. My father was a hunter. And my uncle always was out in the woods like, look at this big red oak, or, morel hunting. And so I grew up going on little hunting trips with my dad when I was little, and my brother did too. So I think it started then. I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't really put 2 and 2 together that, I love nature. It was just this place where I would always go, and nothing mattered. No one was asking me questions. I could just exist. And that's kind of where it all started. And then in college, I wanted to do pre-med, and then I took a zoology class and dissected lots of stuff and decided, I'm not doing pre-med. And then I got into botany the next semester, and I fell in love. It's so weird. It just came naturally to me. There were people in that class who were like, I hate this. This is so hard. It's my only C. And I'm like, how? This is the easiest thing I've ever done in my whole life. So I think maybe it's just something that was always there with me. It just kind of flows in my blood. I don't know. But it's one of the only things that came naturally to me. Excuse me.
It's, it seems to me, like, I'm an old guy, so it seems to me like so many of our young people today, I mean, your age and younger even, are growing up without like literally experiencing nature, like they grow up in a room with screens and phones in their hands
and social media.
Yeah. And it seems to me like I actually think there's probably statistics, and you probably know these better than I do, but I think there's statistics that kids really aren't in nature. Like when I grew up, we had one TV set and Dad controlled it. And pretty much when I went to play, I went outside.
Yeah.
I was in the creeks and the woods and
that was
but a lot of kids today aren't having that experience, are they?
No. And
do you know the stats on that?
Gosh, no, I don't.
I'm just curious.
But I also
isn't it true though? Like, don't you think a lot of,
I could tell you my experience about 1 in 20 to 30 kids that I interact with. I put on a nature camp every summer.
Okay.
I and many of our amazing volunteers.
Right.
And there's always one kid who knows about what a pawpaw is or what this butterfly is or what this is. But once you get them engaged, like, let's go look for a monarch caterpillar. They're excited. But it is so interesting that it just doesn't come naturally, or they're less interested in it than I was at that age. And I sometimes wonder if there's a caution to it from parents, because as we grow in population, there's more strangers all around, and kids can't go out on their own as much anymore. We had free reign to do anything we wanted in our neighborhood. We could go into the creeks, climb trees. And so I do see a lot of parents, and this is no judgment, this is just me seeing things. They're like, don't climb that tree or stay close to me. And I think it's a caution thing, maybe more for my generation that's raising kids.
Right. Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah. Like my dad, we had a truck and you'd throw the kids in the back of the truck, no seatbelts,
Yep. Same with us. It was so fun. I'm like, woohoo.
So I do think that people are more safety conscious about everything, it seems like, in our culture today. But yeah. And what, so you're working with kids, exposing them to nature, and what are the benefits of that for people?
I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So I can give you, I'm an example person. It usually takes me a while to process questions. But this year for Nature Camp, we focused on soil health, because that's something that nobody thinks about. And I got an email from a parent. So one of the last things we did, our activities, was to plant a bean, because beans grow really quick. And we put it in, we made the soil, because we learned about all the aspects of soil, and we made it. And she sent me an email with a picture of her kid's little lima bean that had grown 2 feet up. And I'm like, it's so exciting, because they get so excited, and it gets the parents engaged. And it's something that parents can do with their children outside. And I don't know. I think one of the benefits is just being able to bond with your family over something that, like, improving our natural world. Knowledge is power. So knowing what's around you, knowing that is a poisonous or venomous snake versus that's a little tiny ringneck snake and we can touch it if we want to. I think hands-on learning is crucial. And one of the only ways that I, as a non-traditional learner, actually paid attention to things. So getting connected with the world around you by feeling it and existing in it. And again, knowledge is power. If you know what poison ivy is, you're probably not going to go tromping through a field of poison ivy.
Yeah. Although I got poison ivy so many times as a kid because I didn't like to take baths. And so when I'd go out into nature, get it on my clothes, and then I'd always end up with these awful cases of it because, yeah. As an adult, though, now, when I crash on my mountain bike and fall into a poison ivy patch, immediately get home, take the shower, get all the clothes in the washer, and I usually do okay.
Yeah.
Don't get it too bad, but I'm highly allergic to this. I mean, when I was a kid, I would get it so bad my eyes would be closed shut.
Oh, my gosh.
I'd get it everywhere.
I didn't get it until I was 31.
Oh, wow.
And I've only had it the one time. And I'm paranoid of it now, so I carry Technu with me, which is like a granular scrub.
Oh.
So, and any of my volunteers, if I'm like, Dan, I see you over there. You're close to that poison ivy. Rub this on your legs right now. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you don't want this. Trust me. And being deathly allergic to bees, working outside all the time, that's another benefit is knowing, knowledge
You're
is
allergic
power.
to bees?
And wasps. Yeah, I go into anaphylactic shock. But I've never.
Serious?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So anyone who.
Have you ever been stung?
Yeah, a couple times. Not at the sanctuary. Once in Lawrence when I was 19 and I was barefoot walking around a park, I stepped on one. And that's when I found out. Really gross because it stung my big toe. Until my big toe was so swollen that my toenail just popped off.
Oh, wow.
And that's when we learned that every time, if you're allergic to bees, every time you get stung, it gets worse and worse. So I trained the assistant director, Wayne, how to use an EpiPen just in case. So we keep EpiPens in the truck, in the sheds.
Wow.
But, yeah.
So interesting. I've been stung many times through the years, but I get a big whelp. But I get a big whelp from a mosquito bite.
Yeah, me too. Or an ant.
Way up huge, ridiculous. But
yeah, there's this tiny little ant. I'm like, oops, go on, get off of me. So I'm trying to brush him off without injuring it, and it bites me, and there's a huge welt on me.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. I just interviewed Sammy Aaron, who is a big nature advocate and an environmental advocate and activist. And, the science behind people connecting with nature and learning how to connect with nature is almost everything that ails you, it's good for. I mean, from anxiety to grief processing to, slowing your monkey brain down to, you just so there's all these mental health benefits from connecting deeply with nature. But then also if you do it like you're talking about with family and friends, and then there's really not a downside to it, I guess, unless you get stung or something and you go anaphylactic.
That's what they make EpiPens and Benadryl for. So
yeah. So when you studied botany, what give people what world do you dive into when you study botany, when you become a botanist?
Well, these days, genetics a lot. So classically, botanists like Carl Linnaeus were botanists because they did taxonomy. So they classified these plants based on their characteristics. So the mustard plant, brassicas, have 4 petals. Traditionally they used to be called cruciferaceae because they were 4. So when geneticists got involved, love them or hate them, they started reclassifying things based on their genetic makeup. So there's a lot of that involved in botany, and then looking at things under microscopes and learning how plants transport water and nutrients to their leaves, to their roots, the hormones that are involved. There's also a lot of biochemistry. So it's surprising how much biochemistry and genetics is in botany, but how are you going to learn these pathways, photosynthetic pathways, without knowing the basic biology and biochemistry of it? Because every single enzyme that interacts with something else, like a molecule from water, and splits it apart, it does something. And so we, as scientists, like to know everything about everything. And that turns into basically chemistry, and biochemistry is the foundation of everything. And genetics, even if I hate it, is the basis of everything. Yeah. I'm a classic taxonomist. I'm like, no, this species belongs in this family, not that family. I can't handle it. And then I'm like, no, you have to accept the change, but I hate it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Did you ever get into the story of Chris McCandless? Into the wild story? When
I was in 10th grade, we had to read that book.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will never go backpacking in Alaska, ever. No, thank you.
But the thing was he misidentified
that potato.
Yeah.
Yeah, which my friend has growing in her yard. It's so funny. I'm like, tear it out.
Yeah.
So she's got almost 4-year-old. So I'm like, don't let Isla anywhere near that.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that was I loved that story because I loved his love for nature and his desire to kind of bail out on, the capitalistic economy and get outside of, corporate
like escapism
America, retreat into nature kind of a deal. So I've always had that, like, I've always been a backpacker and I love the outdoors and rock climbing, mountain biking, all that, even though I've never like been a hermit. I've never been like lived on Walden Pond or anything like that, but
I will not. I know what I don't know, and that's a lot. And I also know that I am not a survivalist.
Yeah.
I will tent camp, but I'm still sleeping on my air mattress, but that's not for everybody.
Yeah.
So I have the basic skills. I can start a fire without a light or a fire source, but I don't want to.
Right.
So I think that is a very important aspect of that. Is it a novel, a book? Either way, story. The Into the Wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John Krakauer wrote.
Yeah.
He first wrote a little article for Outside Magazine that like blew up and went viral. And this was back in the early 90s when stuff really didn't go viral that much, I mean, but the story was like really circulated. Then he turned it into a book. Mm-hmm. And then eventually Sean Penn got the rights to turn it into a movie.
I forgot they made it into a movie.
It took him forever to get it into a movie. And Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam did the whole soundtrack.
Really?
For that movie. Yeah. It's cool.
I've obviously never seen the movie.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to know, though, like, this is not you can't just go out in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. Mother Nature, I mean, we've seen, even in documentaries, Mother Nature is brutal. She does what she's got to do.
She does.
Mm-hmm.
So what brought you to Parkville Nature Sanctuary? Let's dive into like the work that you do around Parkville Nature Sanctuary. A lot of my listeners are Kansas City based, although we have people all around, but a lot of them are Kansas City based. So I would say most of the people that are listening know Parkville Nature Sanctuary, and tell us about your work with that. Let's dive into that.
Okay. Well, we'll start from step one. Pre-job. So I sit on a board, environmental board called Heartland Conservation Alliance, and I've been on that board since 2018. I think maybe 2019. No, 2018. And I was kind of trying to find my way in the world of what I wanted to do for a job. I still didn't know because, I'm like conservation background. I want to do botany. I like working with people. I like policy. And so I've always been involved in politics as well. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I started volunteering with a lot of different folks, like Bridging the Gap. I volunteer with the HCA as well. HCA is Heartland Conservation Alliance. So from here on out, it'll be HCA.
Okay.
And stuff like that. And then my current partner and I...
What is Bridging the Gap?
They are a nonprofit in Kansas City, and they do stuff like Heartland Tree Alliance, Green Stewards. So they do what's called BMP, Best Management Practices. And all along like Crossroads area and down Troost, you'll see these little bump outs on the road with little native plants, stormwater control. So that's just one of the things they do. Okay. They have a whole lot of programs that they run.
Bridging the Gap.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And they run my favorite program, KC Wildlands, where so you can Google it, you can look online, you can learn where you can go hike a wildland. So it's mostly preserved natural areas. It's really beautiful. They do seed collection.
Where can you go hike? Give us a few of those examples.
Camp Branch Glade is one. That's in conjunction with Johnson County Parks and Rec, which was my first real job out of college. Woohoo! And Swope Park, I don't know if Bridging the Gap manages Swope Park, but it's a really beautiful hike, and I would recommend it. And
which one? Because I ride my mountain bike in there, and the
bike trails, yeah.
The Earth Riders, there's crews that sort of manage all those trails and keep them in shape and all that, like that are mountain bike people.
Yeah. You probably...
It's like Smithville, Tim King. I can start naming Neil.
Right.
Neil Shower. I mean, there's guys, Ben Bolin. I don't know if you know any of these names or not. These are guys that have worked and managed trails all over Kansas City for years. Rich Bowman.
That name sounds so familiar. Right. And then some of the guys with UTC.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so, I'm like volunteering out there and doing stuff like that. And Alex George Wetland now is what it might be called. We change names every now and then with certain things. So just, finding my way volunteer wise. I worked as a temporary field technician, or no, it was a natural resource technician, for Johnson County Parks and Rec, just for a short while. It was amazing. I learned so much from the field biologist there. His name is Matt Garrett. He's absolutely brilliant and knows, he's probably doesn't think, he's very humble. But he taught me an insane amount, and I just retain everything he said to me. I'm like, store away in my brain forever, keep it there. And so he works with the crew in Casey Wildlands a lot to do seed collection, and they preserve, they collect these seeds so that the genotype stays there. So if it has been growing in Johnson County for hundreds of years, it will stay in Johnson County for hundreds of years. It's a really amazing thing that they all do. And then, I met my current partner. We met teaching a class about invasive honeysuckle removal. It was kind of a adorable, beautiful thing. And then
by the way, my friends who work the trails for mountain bike stuff, the honeysuckle is just a monster.
My kind of people.
Oh God.
Send them my way, because we've got so much work to do in the nature sanctuary.
They've cut it out over, just the friends that I know, have spent, days and hours cutting out honeysuckle at Wyandotte County Lake.
Oh, good.
Trails, Smithville trails, Swope Park, those are some of the places I ride quite often. And then,
so the Bridle Trail at Waco Lake.
Yeah.
I love that trail.
Yeah. And then they also, there's a Hodge Park Trail up here in the Northland. They cut out stuff there. Stocksdale. Those are places that I ride quite often.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Every honeysuckle.
Yeah, they hate honeysuckle.
Good. I know. I noticed that.
And I used to always think it was so cool when I was a kid, because the little flowers and you'd smell it. And
that's so funny. I'm working on a collaboration with two of my best friends who are beautiful artists to get the word out. I don't know what we're going to do with this, but I'm kind of starting it as an invasive species piece. So it's called Beautiful But Bad. And doing introductions to honeysuckle and the berries, and it's beautiful and it smells great. And autumn olive, it smells so amazing, but we hate it. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, I could talk about these kind of things for hours, but why are invasive species of plants a problem, and why is it so important to preserve our native plants to the area? Just give a basic 101 on that.
Oh, happily. So invasives are species of plants that were brought over here, whether it be for ornamental value or like my arch nemesis, I don't know his name, but he brought over every species that Shakespeare ever wrote about. So that's how we got the starling introduced here.
And that's an invasive
bird. Yes. And so the reason we don't like them is because native plants have co-evolved a natural way to do checks and balances. So be that insects that feed off their leaves. So like the pawpaw, a tree, the zebra-striped swallowtail will feed off of the leaves. It kind of keeps it in check. We've got natural predators with all of our native plants. So, they grow together. They grow next to each other and with each other. They don't outcompete each other. But invasive species will come in and they will take over an entire area, depleting the food source for our our native birds and insects and whatnot, because things like honeysuckle provide zero food source through their leaves, and their berries, for example, birds will eat them a lot, but studies have shown that it actually can cause heart disease in birds similar to what humans get, because their berries are not meant for the bird species that live here. They are meant for Japanese birds and Southeastern Asian birds, and they need that higher sugar content, whereas our birds need more protein. So it gets in there and it causes them heart disease, which is wild to me. Yeah.
So crazy.
Right? And so it's a thing of, it's a competition thing.
So it's like invasive species, like you can have fish that are birds, plants. animals even?
Probably?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like the jumping worm, the little earthworm. Actually, I think most earthworms that are in North America are invasive, but not as problematic as the like hammerhead worm. But my specialty is plants, so I'm not going to speak on the zoology. I mean, I will a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, so it's more of a thing of they've got competitive advantages. So I use honeysuckle as my example. Mm-hmm. It's one of the first things that greens up in the spring, which means it takes in all the sunlight, which means that nothing underneath gets sunlight. So our native sedges, our native little woodland wildflowers don't get the sunlight, so they don't get as much energy. And so these are really busy growing and taking up space. And they're also one of the last things to stay green. So in the fall, same thing. They keep the sunlight and nothing else can get it. And they also have been shown to leach out chemicals of their roots, which is harmful for other plants. So it can kill off its competitors rather than grow with them. And like I said about the berries, it's a prolific spreader, and there's nothing in the natural world that, in our area specifically, that can keep it from growing so aggressively. So that's why we focus on it, to try and eradicate it, which will never happen. But we can control it though, keep it at bay when all that good stuff of cutting it down and hoping it doesn't flower, because flowers lead to the berries, which means birds eat them and spread them like crazy. Mm-hmm. So I like to do a remove and replace. So we remove the honeysuckle and we'll replace it with a spice bush or a chokeberry, something that's beneficial to the wildlife. Mm. Yeah.
So interesting. So what kind of programs are you overseeing for Parkville Nature Sanctuary?
Well, I'm still getting on that program development. Right now, our programming is mostly event focused, but we do a lot of volunteer work days. Anytime someone emails me or calls me just to be like, hey, I want to do volunteer, I need to do service hours. I'm like, great. Have you ever removed honeysuckle before? So I get people trained in that. I like to provide an educational outlet for folks as well, because some people are just bored and want to do something and want to connect. And, I've met a handful of people who have been going through a divorce or going through a huge life change, and like, I don't know what to do with my time. I'm like, well, let me fill up all your time. Mm. So we get to working together, mulching trails, doing all that good stuff. It's less I don't have a schedule for volunteer work days right now, just because everything is something might happen and it's like, oh, this is my immediate priority now. Or, oh, now this, I have to get working on some project that I've been putting off for 3 weeks now. But you can pretty much count on us doing volunteer work every week. I recently had Stephen Daniels from the River Park Church come and have a mission trip with the folks out of Arkansas. He brought 80 volunteers. 80.
Oh, sweet.
And I had one of our volunteers come out, and we got all of the garden beds, their memorial gardens. We got those all weeded, their native gardens, mulched. They finished the trails. I had some kids doing honeysuckle removal because they're like, oh, I can use a saw. Heck yeah. So those
Very
are cool.
Yeah. When you take kids into the sanctuary, what do you find is what helps kids come alive? Is it you do like a 1 hour program with kids? Like when you were mentioning that you took children.
Oh, for nature camp.
Yeah, nature camp. I
treat them like humans. I think that's why they I talk to them. Mm-hmm. I'm not like, now guys, we gotta do da-da-da. It's more like kind of feel it out, figure out what their interests are. So nature camp is a 3-day day camp. Mm-hmm. In the very beginning, I make sure everyone feels comfortable. We talk about what our interests are in the summer. So it's more of just a chance for, in the beginning, figure out what the kids' interests are and work with them that way. So one kid might be loving to run around wild and crazy. So we separate that person from the kids who want to sit there and draw, and we have that kid do these activities while these kids are doing those activities, things that just work with kids. And I have the ability to do that because I usually have amazing volunteers. So one kid wants to play Red Rover while another kid wants to draw pictures of caterpillars. We're like, okay, we can make that work. We'll split into groups. So I think flexibility with structure is a huge part of that. Teaching kids things they don't know about nature, something they would never see, like parasitic wasps. And they're like, ew, that's gross. I'm like, yes, I know. And again, hands-on. So I'm like,
so cool. So when you do, like, I'm wanting to connect with you maybe on a Sunday night and bring some of my groups out there and do a meander. Is that a word that you used with me? I can't remember. Instead of a hike.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would love to do that.
And so that you go slow enough to where we're identifying. Is that something you do?
Always. Okay. Almost always. Yeah, I always recommend, I'm like, if you are...
Like we're not just doing speed walking through the woods kind of thing.
No.
But we slow the pace down to where we can, identify, like how do you work that? Like if you take a group on a meander...
Well, I recently did this with the Department of Conservation, and they put it on. I was just there and assisting, leading with them. And I don't know. I just talk about the plants that I see, the interactions that the plants have with each other, the insects that we might see. There's always something, and it's always beautiful. Or like, this is the spot where the ducks regularly nest, or this is the spot that I saw a Carolina wren once, or do you hear that? That's this kind of bird. We get up close and personal with milkweed, and I really like to talk about how, while yes, it's a good nectar source, it's also really detrimental to some pollinators because the way the flower is shaped, a lot of critters, their legs get like trapped in it. And so these things will be flying off like with one less leg because of the shape and the anatomy of the milkweed flower. But it's still vital to, monarch caterpillars and other certain pollinators. So then that also leads into the conversation of plant your milkweed with other nectar sources like coneflower. I talk about management and natural resource. So we walk through the prairie and talk about the prairie burn. It's kind of like a natural history, a walk through the past 2.5 years of my management, which is...
So this little area, how many acres is Parkville Nature Sanctuary?
116, and we've got a little one along Rush Creek called Sullivan Nature Sanctuary, and that's 8 acres.
Okay. But where's that at?
Right along Rush Creek, so off of Main Street, right before you get into Platte Landing Park, there's that one-way bridge. It's just tucked away over there.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Huh. There's a lookout. There's always so many turtles over there. But Nature Sanctuary...
You're talking about down in the actual park area.
So there's the big Nature Sanctuary, the Nature Sanctuary, which is 116 acres. Right. And then you meander down about, I don't know, a little less than a mile.
Just follow the creek out of there.
Kind of, yeah. Just follow, take the same road that got you there. And if you're going to Platte Landing Park, just stop right before the bridge.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's where it's at. Most people miss it because it's not super showy. Right. We do... So, city ordinance is like no dogs, but it also kind of leans onto what Wayne and I decide of the rules. So we do let people bring their dogs into Sullivan. It's 0.2 miles of trails. It's a twin trail, so north trail, south trail. So total, it's 0.4 miles. It's really small, but almost no one ever goes there. So it's so quiet. And then there's a water source and a lookout, and the lookout's really cute. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I went to Graydon Elementary School, and my parents lived in a house off of Blair Road for 49 years. They just sold it and moved like a year and a half ago.
Wow.
So I used to walk to downtown Parkville when I was a kid before I could drive, go to McKeon's, which is where the Stone Canyon Pizza place is now, and that was like an ice cream parlor, soda shop, played pinball. And then that where Parkville Nature Sanctuary is, I used to hike up in there all the time and do, like I camped out there in the wintertime. Like we'd camp out at Riss Lake. It's back when nobody lived around Riss Lake, and we knew the person who had a key to the gate. So it's like that whole area from Riss Lake all the way into Parkville Nature Sanctuaries, areas that I've literally, since I was a kid,
stomping
out
grounds,
in, camped in, fished, like just all kinds of stuff.
I hear so many stories like that too, which is why I like to listen to people or old school volunteers. They're like, we've been volunteering here for 20 years. I'm like, okay, well, what do you like about that? What changes that I've made do you resonate with? Because when I had my interview, they were asking me why I wanted the job. And I was very honest in saying that I believe that the nature sanctuary has a heart and a brain of its own. I mean, it's nature, but still it's got its own heart and brain. And so we just have to kind of listen to it, listen to what it's saying. And there is such an emotional connection. It's part of people's identities. And so to take that away from people would just be inhumane. And so if I change something, it's very gradual. It's talking to folks and trying not to make anything too different, because that's one of the things that we have left that's truly natural.
Yeah. So if you think about that area, I'm not sure I'm going to ask the question very well, but like as an ecosystem, that's like if you think of Parkville Nature Sanctuary as an ecosystem, and then you compare that ecosystem to other ecosystems outside of Kansas City and Kansas or Missouri, what maybe is unique or special about that ecosystem at Parkville Nature Sanctuary, or is there something unique? Or
I think the streams really bring a lot to the nature sanctuary. We've got several streams. And that's one thing. I mean, streams provide life to everything, off of rivers into everywhere. It's a water source.
Are any of those spring fed, or are they?
Yes. Then there's also the main waterfall, which is rain dependent and through Riss Lake. So even if they are man-made, they still provide crucial life source to the wildlife. Water is everything in the end, and humanity's fight 400 years from now, it's going to be over water. Our wars will be over water. That is what I truly believe. I mean, it's the source of all life, like biological life, speaking that way. Yeah. So I think it's streams for me that really just brings into this beauty. I also think it's a connectivity with humans. And it is an ecosystem as a whole, and we are part of that ecosystem, and people truly care about the nature sanctuary. And that shows in the fact that we are able to get people to come in and volunteer. We go from woodland to prairie to woodland to playground, and it's all maintainable.
So within that 116 acres, you've got a woodland ecosystem, a prairie ecosystem.
We do.
So two different ecosystems.
And sort of
each of those
savanna,
ecosystems have their own species of plants, bugs, animals, I guess.
Yeah, provides habitat for different varieties. So you look at it as a whole, say, just a small example, say you're looking at the whole entire thing. You're like, oh, there's 10 species of birds that live here. Well, then you break it down even smaller, and you get that biodiversity from the different habitats. Like, 6 species live in the woodland, where 4 species live in the prairie. Obviously, it's astronomically larger than that, but just, to break it down that way. So we might have biodiversity of XYZ number, but that comes from our multiple different habitats that we have.
So what are some of your favorite animal visit? Even though you're a botanist, I should ask about plants, but what are some of your favorite special visitors and guests to the Parkville Nature Sanctuary other than humans?
I like the snakes. Well, and the deer, it's so funny because deer will get to know your voice. And today I ran into our little young family. There's 4 of them. And I interact with them all the time because I always talk to them. I'm never silent. I'm like, hey, I'm here. It's me. Hey, guys. And so they all looked at me and they're like, oh, it's just her. And so they just kept walking on. But then I'll see them, I'll be hiking on the trails behind someone and everyone stops, and the deer stop and stare at them and they just run off. But they'll eat in front of me. They just stand there. Like a little yearling came up to me last year and I was so close to petting it, but I'm like, no, Kristen, don't do it. Don't do it. It's against the rules of morality. Don't pet the wildlife. So I'm sitting there, but I could have pet this little guy.
Wow.
Excuse me. The turkey babies, they're so cute and they're so goofy. I love them. And the snakes, though, are very cool. This is my first time I've ever seen a copperhead in person. And, it's like, oh, that's like so
recently?
Scary. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I was up on Whitetail and I was looking at this, a huge red oak had fallen last year. And so Wayne and I went and removed it. We spent so much time. I was like, Wayne, get a picture of me by the roots because they were like 6 feet tall. And I was like, oh, look at our work we did. Just so happy. And I looked at one of the stumps and I'm like, oh, that's a copperhead. So it was very exciting.
I ran across a copperhead last year.
I'd never seen one.
There. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was up at Smithfield Trail mountain biking, and I saw these 3 kids like standing in a circle, and they were standing around a copperhead, and they were little kids. There was no parents around, and I was like, "Hey, guys, that's a poisonous snake," and like they didn't have a clue, and they were literally had it. It was coiled and mad at them, and there's 3 little kids like literally in a circle around a copperhead. And I was like, holy crap,
that's horrifying.
Yeah. But tell me your love for fungi.
Oh, I could go on forever.
Tell me about fungi. And the thing that got me, I just recently, like a couple of years ago, read this book called The Secret Life of Trees by a German arborist. Yes. I forgot his name.
Yes.
But I had always known that aspen trees, I love the Rocky Mountains. I love aspens. And I've always known that like an aspen forest has basically one root system. This is the way people talk about it. And so it's kind of like this whole community of living organisms. But when I read this Secret Life of Trees, it talked about how all forests have communication systems through the fungus, which I think somebody called it the world wood web.
Yeah.
Instead of the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
Wood web. But tell me about your love for fungi.
It goes on infinitely, as fungi does.
What is fungi? Is it a plant or is it an animal?
Neither.
Neither.
It's its own little guy. It's a fungi. Oh, that was terrible. My partner, who is a 14-year-old, would be very proud of that semi-dad joke there. So I love it. I truly believe it's the one thing on this planet that turns death into life. You'll see it decomposing animals. It does not discriminate. It will decompose all things. You can actually even use it on oil spills. And eventually the fungi will, set out spores. It eats the oil. And then eventually that brings decomposition. It brings little tiny critters. This brings birds around. Birds bring seeds, and it can become its own little weird tiny habitat, all because you're cleaning up an oil spill with fungi. It is literally connected to everything. So you look, you won't, I never have, but I have seen the data of what connects tree roots to tree roots. And there's like arbuscular mycorrhizae and all types of fungi. And there's some that'll literally weave in between cell walls and live within a plant.
So this is underground.
And inside of plants.
Okay.
So it'll be like, okay, here's my one big tree, and it's got one little all the way throughout the tree, down under the roots, into the roots, out into its own world now. So it lives inside and outside of the plant. And it just like...
In the fungus, the fungi is literally networked all around the root system.
Yes, absolutely.
And then extending beyond.
And yeah, we don't even know where it goes. It's fascinating. We could have fungus that connects us to freaking Japan, for all I know. I would not be surprised. I think that more people who study the ocean should be looking for ocean fungi. I bet it's out there.
I read that the largest living organism in the world is a field of fungi up in Oregon somewhere. Like it's massively, like hundreds of miles of acres, or square miles. I
want to touch it. That sounds awesome.
So I'm like, whew. And like these fungi literally network trees to each other.
They can communicate.
How does that work?
I think of it as like a little telephone wire that also sends signals. And so what I think is that, there's been studies on sagebrush of how it communicates to other species within its own species. But we've seen studies on how certain trees and say an oak tree will communicate with a hickory tree. So it has no reason to need to be communicating to these things outside of its family, a kinship, if you will. But fungi allows it to. So say someone's in there, or say a bug, let's talk about bugs, is eating all the leaves, and this tree is like, oh no. So in the tree itself, it sends up its own hormones to make that leaf taste gross. But now with the fungi attaching roots from this oak tree to this hickory tree, it can tell the hickory tree, hey man, watch out. This guy's been chewing on leaves. We did this into our leaves, so you might want to do the same thing. And
that's bizarre.
It is so bizarre, but it's so cool.
So I've heard like you've got these chemical, like communication systems. It's fungi sends, like if there's bugs attacking, then they alert the whole forest to the bugs.
Yeah.
Or if there's a drought and trees are suffering, it may communicate and like water systems are sometimes even resourced to trees that need it more. Is that true? That is true too. And also the fungi, if it gets something from the tree, it usually gives something back. So if it's, I have too much sugar, I'm going to give it to the tree. Stuff like that is also. So nutrients are reallocated through a communication system that's conducted by the fungi. Yeah. And instead of a voice, they use, I say hormones, but it's stuff like auxin and ethylene, and their chemical makeup is fascinating to me. Gibberellic acid, all these things that'll like tell the tree to build new growth is also the way that they communicate with each other. So trees can put off toxins through the leaves based on something that's attacking them. Yeah, so it's a defense system. So if it's something that's not supposed to be there, because a lot of insects have what's called elicitors in their insect saliva, and it'll be something that goes into the tree. They're like they chomp on the leaf, and then it goes into the tree to be like. That's how the tree identifies what insect it is for the most part. So it's I wouldn't say it's a genetic specific thing because I'm not sure if it is, but I think it is. So these elicitors get inside the tree and it tells the tree, hey, so-and-so's here, so-and-so's bad. So we need to send something that tastes bitter. So-and-so goes away. So fascinating. So you walk into a forest and that forest is alive. It communicates with each other. The trees communicate with each other. The fungus runs a communication system amongst all these different trees, and even different species of trees communicate with different species of trees. Plants get involved in that as well. They sure do. And wow, it's crazy. It is. It's so beautiful. I love it. There's an interaction with everything. So tell us about the pawpaw. I love the pawpaw. So, I just recently, I grew up around here, and I've eaten most of the things that you can eat out of the wild around here, but I had never had eaten anything from a pawpaw. Oh, well. And I just had a couple years ago, a gal had made this, I don't know what you would call it, but it was really a sweet treat kind of thing. It was really good. Last year I started hosting a pawpaw harvesting hike. So I invite anyone who wants to join me on that around the fall. Yeah, September, October. Okay. It's kind of one of those things where I'll find out the people who want to do it, let them know, hey, it could happen next week. It could happen the week after. I just have to make sure I know when the pawpaws are ripe. So we do it, and they're these weird little fruits. When they're small, they look like peanuts. And they can grow in single clusters. They can grow in clusters of 4. So the pawpaw tree, big leaves, kind of looks like a hickory leaf sometimes. Some people call them banana trees. But That's not really a banana tree.
Yeah, they're like,
though.
It's a Missouri banana. But the thing to me is I think they taste like coconutty mango custard. And there's no pretty way to eat it. You just kind of have to dive in like it's a brain if you're a zombie, I guess. I don't know. This
person had made some kind of a pop-up bread type
I've done
thing.
That before.
Okay.
I had more than I could and they're not shelf stable. So it's not like we can sell them to a grocery store. Mm-hmm. And the seeds are so big. So it's impractical in the terms of feeding everyone or bringing it to a grocery store. Because really you've got about 3 days maximum after you harvest them. And the seed, they're messy. So we take a sieve and we'll like smash them around and get the pulp if we don't just eat them all. There's only so many you can eat though after a while. Don't eat the skin. It can cause inflammation in your lips and tongue. Another woohoo papas. But they taste amazing and they don't.
I was impressed. And it's like so weird, like, because, literally most things that are edible around here that I've at least tried it.
Yeah. I made ice cream out of it 2 years ago. It was delicious.
Oh,
we did out of persimmons as well.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. That works.
Persimmons are scary if you've ever bitten into one that's not fully ripe because it's the only way I can describe it is like eating aspirin.
Bitter.
Yeah.
Super bitter. Yeah. Cool. What else is maybe one of your favorite things that people could discover in Parkville Nature Sanctuary?
Ooh, everything. I'm a prairie person, so I'm naturally drawn to the prairies. And we recently have been working on eradicating the invasive Johnson grass and Lespedeza. So personally for me, I look and I'm like, oh, look at all that dead invasive species. But beyond that, I think any of the edibles is always really cool, like gooseberries, and I call it like a fruit salad hike. So sometimes we'll go and we'll get wild blackberries and gooseberries, spring onions. But there's so much history in the nature sanctuary. There's always mulberries. Yeah. If you can fight the birds for them.
Mm-hmm. You got any probably got black walnuts in there.
Yeah, plenty. They dented my car plenty of times. I don't even care at this point. They don't learn how to make dye out of them, so we can teach kiddos next year for nature camp different ways to do dye. But some more interesting things that I think the history is really fascinating to me. Like the old root cellar that's there across from the prairie was used from Park University when that whole area was like 11 acres of bottomland farm. The fact that the old Cape Trail is actually named after a donkey is really cool. She built basically the entire trail system. And something that nobody will ever see, but is a really, really cool thing is like all the partnerships, all the organizations that get involved with the nature sanctuary. So, Heartland Conservation Alliance, Heartland Tree Alliance, Park University, Main Street Parkville Association, like all of these people have something to do with nature sanctuary. And it's not like they get anything monetary back from it, but they want to work, see what they can do to work with us or what opportunities there are volunteer wise, all these church groups that come out. It's one of the most beautiful things about the sanctuary that's not nature related is how much people want to be there and want to do work out there.
That's so cool.
It is so cool. It's amazing. And
well, thanks for your work out there. I love it. Tell people how they can connect and get involved. Like, is there a website to go to?
Yeah.
If they want to volunteer. Does the website have all the programs? If they want to volunteer, do you have a volunteer sign up thing?
I'm working on that. So what we've been doing is just having people email me to get involved. I am trying to get some volunteer software in place so it'll be a lot easier for everyone, including myself. But until then, and I will happily give you my email so we can send it out to folks. But please do email me, call City Hall. And then the website, parkvillemo.gov, I think. Google it.
What happens if you just Google Parkville Nature Sanctuary?
You'll find us. Yeah, at the Parkville website. And then you get to the Parkville website and then it's community, little tab on top on the right-hand side. And then you'll scroll down on community. It's Nature Sanctuary. And my email's all over there. And I will leave.
Where do you get a t-shirt like that?
Email Kristen. I had him for nature camp as well.
Okay.
So, This is a youth medium, so I have only youth sizes left, but I am going to be ordering more adult. I know. Well, I'll have Ghost Story t-shirts too, and they'll be cute. I've got someone working on a little design, so I don't know if we'll have a little witch hat on the owl or if we'll have a little pumpkin. Maybe we'll have both. I don't know. It's going to be super cute. But I do encourage people.
How many kinds of owls do you have in Parkville Nature Sanctuary?
I've only heard one.
Is it a barred owl?
Yes.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that's all that's there.
Right.
We have bats as well.
Which kind?
The cute little brown kind. I don't know.
Okay. How many different kinds of woodpeckers are in Parkville Nature Sanctuary?
I've seen 4.
So what do you got? A downy woodpecker?
Downy pileated. I've seen redheaded, yellow belly sapsuckers, which sounds like an insult, but it is not.
Yeah.
And northern flickers. We've got northern flickers. We had a little family of them by the scout shelter.
Sweet.
Yeah, they're screaming at me.
What's your most unique bird visitor that you've ever had that you're aware of?
I heard that there was a bird recently that the Audubon Society was really interested in, and for the life of me now, I cannot remember what its name was. And it was like last week they were chasing it.
There was one year you're too young, but maybe not even maybe a decade ago, some snowy owls came this far south.
That is
which
cool.
Is not actually probably a good sign though, because it might have been that they were in trouble. I don't know. But I saw one out at Smithville Lake, and I was curious if any of them, I don't know, Not
that I've seen. Yeah. I did see, I see indigo buntings every year, which is always a really exciting one. It's like, what is that blue?
I love those.
Yeah. They're showy. Who doesn't love a showy bird?
Right. Yeah, I got into bird watching too one time.
We just installed a bird interpretive sign down on Bluebird Trail.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to get better at identifying all the plants and trees.
Oh, I can help you.
and even the wildflowers. Like I know they have these apps where you can just put your phone on it and I guess it.
Yeah, but that doesn't teach you everything about the plant. If you can key it out, then you know the plant. It's kind of drawing. I don't truly know an object until I've tried to draw it. I don't truly know the plant until I can key it out. And that teaches you.
So the apps are cheating.
It's still beneficial and a great resource, but if you truly want to get to know it, get to know the characteristics. What is the bark like? What are the twigs like? Even with certain sedges, you'll take a hand lens and you'll look at the roots and figure out the different types of roots. There's scales on roots that you may not have known before. Same thing with learning about butterflies. Their wings are all made up of these weird scales. It's really hard to preserve them.
What are the butterfly? One time I was walking there just a few weeks ago, and I was coming, at the bottom of the Wrist Lake Dam. I walked, I came out there, kind of in the clear. You come out of the trees a little bit, and then I'm heading toward the waterfall. And there's that wooden path there, and it's kind of overgrown, and there were a bunch of black butterflies. It looked like they had black wings.
Oh, and they're like green.
They were all over.
Their bodies are green.
I think they're black.
They're damselflies. If I'm thinking of the same thing.
They were bigger. They were almost bigger like butterfly, like maybe small butterflies.
Oh, and do they have blue at the tip of their wings? Yeah, that's a black admiral.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really beautiful. I kind of get them confused with swallowtails.
Right in that little area there. What is that about? Why do they congregate there?
Butterflies like gross things. They like beautiful things and they like nectar, but they also, there's those bright yellow butterflies, they're sulfurs. You will find them on feces often. And I have always, I know. I've joked like if butterflies proboscis, I am so horrible at pronouncing that, their little mouth part, if it was pokey enough, we would hate butterflies because they would want to eat all of our blood and sweat. Butterflies like gross things. Technically they could be considered decomposers as well, but luckily they cannot pierce our skin.
Isn't that crazy? They're so beautiful and they like to eat crap.
Yeah, literally.
Well, we could talk forever about this, so I'm gonna get a group out there to do a walk through things. So if anybody's listening to this will come out pretty quickly in a week or two. And if anybody's listening and you want to go on a nature walk with us, I'm going to put a group together here for this fall.
get a sign up if you will. And that way I can know how many folks will be there.
Okay. How many can we take max?
I don't know. How many do you want to bring out?
I'm guessing we'll do 20.
Oh, yeah.
Is that easily. Too many?
I was going to say, if you have 100, we'd probably want to split up into groups.
Yeah, no, I was thinking 20.
20 is good. That way everyone can learn a little bit. And something that I always like to do is like have every person kind of categorize their interests, which I know it kind of just diminishes people down into the things that they are interested about. But hey, who cares? If you're interested in it, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Diminish me that way, I say. Be it plants, be it healthy soil, be it I hate nature, I'm just here. That's fine. I will make people excited about something. It is my one of my traits that I am proud of is that if I can get little kids interested into nature,
get adults.
Yes, I can.
Well, you have great enthusiasm. I love that. And I love your love for nature. So
thank you. Thanks for letting me talk.
Yeah. Thanks for all you do. And thanks everybody for tuning in to Spirituality Adventures. Kristen Bontrager.
Yeah.
And Parkville Nature Sanctuary. This is an opportunity to get into nature and to commune with our roots.
Yeah.
Who we're connected with.
Exactly. By fungi.
Excellent.
Yes.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you next time. This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.